Greetings and welcome to our panel on Data for the Blue Future, New Collaborations for Progress. I'm Joel Gurin, President of the Center for Open Data Enterprise, also known as CODE. We're very pleased to be able to organize and moderate this panel on ocean data and how it can be used to help meet the UN Sustainable Development Goals and improve the environment and the economy. Ocean data is vital to protect the marine environment, manage coastal resources, and find sustainable ways to grow the blue economy, the use of marine resources for economic development and growth. It's essential to achieving UN SDG Goal 14, Life Below Water, which aspires to conserve and sustainably use the ocean, seas, and marine resources for sustainable development. It's also as important as atmospheric and satellite data in the global effort to fight climate change. So for all these reasons, we need to find better ways to collect, share, analyze, and apply this critical kind of data. And now we're at a point where that is more possible than ever. Government agencies, nonprofits, and companies in the private sector are working together to make more ocean data available and computable in the cloud. At the same time, a number of industries, startups, academic and research institutions, and other entities are collecting more data than ever about the ocean. So before we start, I'd like to give you some brief background about our organization and how we've gotten involved in this area. CODE is a nonprofit organization based in Washington, D.C., whose mission is to maximize the value of open and shared data for the public good. And we do this by working with government agencies, businesses, nonprofits, and researchers who are both data providers and data users. We believe that open and shared data are powerful tools for economic, social, and scientific progress, and we believe that the only way to maximize the value of the data is to bring data providers and users together to prioritize the most valuable kinds of data we have and figure out how to make it more accessible, useful, and relevant. So to do this, CODE has now held more than 24 roundtables since we started in 2015, most of them with the US federal government, where we bring together as many as 70 or 80 high-level data stewards and data experts to find new opportunities in the data that they're able to share with each other. And last February, we held one of these roundtables on putting ocean data to use. We were very fortunate to be able to co-host this roundtable in partnership with NOAA, the US National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, and with the Ocean Conservancy, Amazon, Esri, and Microsoft, several of whom are represented on today's panel. We're now working with Ocean Conservancy to publish a white paper on ocean data, which you'll hear a little bit more about later today. And all of this work has framed our perspective and is the basis for this panel that I'm pleased to moderate today. So we have an outstanding panel that's going to present and to discuss this important topic. They'll present case studies of the use of open ocean data, describe current data sources and collaborations, explore new collaborative models for improving ocean data collection, sharing, and analysis. So I'm really pleased and thank you all for being here today for this Zoom panel. So now we're going to sort of show you everybody who's here in gallery view and just give everybody a minute to introduce themselves. And they're going to introduce themselves in the order in which they're going to be presenting, beginning with John Baines from WRI. John?
Hi, thanks, Joel. Thanks for the nice introduction. As you said, I'm John Baines from the World Resources Institute. I work with the Oceans program on the development of a new ocean data platform called the Ocean Watch. And my background is mostly working in tropical marine ecosystems, but also on blue carbon, also with seagrass conservation and plastics, with a little bit of work in sustainable tourism. But yeah, I'm here today mostly to talk about this new platform that we're developing, Ocean Watch, and what that means for the management of ocean ecosystems and supporting those ocean managers.
Great, thank you, John. Next, Dawn, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Hello, everyone. My name is Dawn Wright. Very pleased to be representing Esri, the Environmental Systems Research Institute. I am the chief scientist of Esri and also a marine geologist by training. I spent most of my career mapping the ocean floor, looking at underwater hot springs, tectonics, But now my work is mainly involved with looking at the totality of the ocean, particularly for Sustainable Development Goal 14. My colleagues and I are working on several collaborations and projects there, which you'll hear about in my presentation. And I'm also still pleased to be on the faculty of Oregon State University.
Dawn, thank you. Anna.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for the opportunity to join you today. So my name is Ana Pinheiro-Privet. I'm with the sustainability team at Amazon, and I lead the Amazon Sustainability Data Initiative. For a little bit of background, I actually spent most of my career as a researcher at NASA and NOAA and doing remote sensing and land surface temperature for the most part, and then recently moved into more programmatic roles. And what I would like to do today is to spend a few minutes introducing you to the Amazon Sustainability Data Initiative, because I believe that it's relevant not only for the conversation we're having today, but also to the broader discussion of how to enable better access to data and analytics to effectively manage our oceans. So thank you.
Thank you, Anna. Amy?
Hi, everyone. I'm Amy Trice. I'm the Director of Ocean Planning at Ocean Conservancy. I'm an aquatic ecologist focusing on national level ocean policy in Washington, D.C. I do a lot of work bringing scientific research as well as what communities and ocean stakeholders need in the various states and regions to Capitol Hill decision makers, working to make those connections with what science is telling us we need to address in the ocean and how we need to improve management to make more informed decisions, advancing and improving access to ocean data, and working with the federal agencies and states to do that is also part of my work. And I'll be talking a bit more about integrated ocean management and some of the policy work as it relates to ocean data in my presentation today.
Great, thank you. Linwood?
Hi, everybody. I'm Linwood Pendleton. I am the Senior Vice President for Science at the Center for the Fourth Industrial Revolution Ocean, which we call C4IR Ocean, and I'll be talking about this new institute that's based in Norway, in Oslo, but I live in France, where I'm also a researcher at the European Institute for Marine Studies, which is based just outside of Brest, France. Before I came to Europe about 7 years ago, I was the acting chief economist at NOAA, so a NOAA alumnus on the panel. And I worked previously at Duke University as their director of ocean policy.
Great, thank you. Nati, you're next.
So hi everybody. Thank you very much for the invitation. It's a pleasure to be in this panel. My name is Nati Karfi. I'm the Deputy Director of the Open Data Charter. And I will be sharing the work we've been doing opening up climate data, and specifically the implementations in Uruguay and Chile, which are two countries with huge coastal and oceanic platforms. So just the learnings and the challenges that we've encountered in those implementations.
Fantastic. And Claire from OECD.
Hi, everyone. So I'm Claire. I'm with the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, an intergovernmental economic organization based in Paris. It's a pleasure to join this panel. I lead the OECD research to measure better ocean economic activities and how we can use science and technologies to improve ocean sustainability. So of course, ocean observations play a big part in the evidence we need. And we've been working with data repositories such as the UK MEDIN, the Marine Environmental Data and Information Network, as well as with GOOS, the Global Ocean Observing System, on the valuation of marine data to make the case for ocean observations.
Thank you, welcome. And Matt, if you could just introduce yourself as well.
Sure, hi everyone. I'm Matt Rumsey. I am the Research and Communications Manager here at CODE. And my background is sort of in data policy from a big picture perspective, but I've been really lucky to get to work with Amy and her colleagues at Ocean Conservancy, and also our colleague at CODE, Nadisha Phillip, who's our research fellow this summer, on the ocean data white paper that we're going to talk a little bit more about. So really excited to be here and helping out with everything.
Great, thank you. Well, welcome everybody. This is a phenomenal gathering. We really, really appreciate you all taking the time for these presentations and this important conversation. So without further ado, we'll start with our first presentation. The way we're going to do this is we'll have 3 presentations and then break for everybody to have a chance for some discussion. Then 4 more presentations, some more discussion so that we can really cover a lot of issues and have a little bit of break between presentations to reduce everybody's Zoom fatigue just a bit. So John, you're up first. Looking forward to your presentation, and you have the floor.
Thanks. I'll just get it up on my computer. As I said, I'm John Baines from the World Resources Institute, and I'll be mostly talking on the integration/use side of ocean data, specifically on the deficit and also introducing a new platform we're developing at WRI called Ocean Watch. Next slide. In the early scoping of Ocean Watch, we have heard from some ocean professionals that they would benefit from openly available data being provided through a platform that helps them quickly visualize and contextualize the data available. And now we know that enhancing access to and functionality with data can increase the time which professionals spend on the tasks they have at hand, whether that is on research or on policy and planning. And that is even when those professionals have the necessary skills to conduct those analyses and visualizations themselves. This is likely because it partially bridges the behavioral gap between the general awareness of data and data products and the uptake and use of them. And this intervention, specifically aiding in the uptake of data through targeted platforms of one form or another, is likely to become particularly important as the amount of data grows in parallel with the demand on ocean professionals to use and integrate that data. A demand that is quickly being placed upon ocean stakeholders from several levels around the world, as we can see from the tools here, like the apps from Abelobi, Global Fishing Watch, and the use of Go On Explorer maps. Next slide. However, the problem of the uptake of data grows as we move beyond just the research professionals. The integration of science into ocean management is a central theme of study, strongly represented in the Decade for Ocean Science. And data, particularly the effective use of data in policy and ocean management, is an important part of that science policy interface. And we can see this clearly when we think of key processes like marine spatial planning, a key asset in the Sustainable Ocean Development Toolkit, but also potentially very data heavy, introducing the common challenge of what data is the most important to use in this process. And as the amount of data that is becoming available grows, that pressure on governance institutions around the world to effectively integrate data into processes like marine spatial planning will also grow. And the resources for that immediate incorporation aren't necessarily ubiquitous. Even today, where we have, next slide. Even today, where we have significantly more data than in past decades, we can foresee a big explosion in ocean data, but there still remains this gap in the uptake and use. And this is probably due to a mixture of the lack of awareness that the data exists, a lack of planning frameworks for integrating those potentially new streams of data into governance processes, and a lack of uptake on the behavioral side. But one thing is for sure, the amount of data available for ocean management continues to grow from 2 broad sides: advances in monitoring systems using autonomous vehicles, amongst other systems, and the spread of effective communications technology allowing for previously isolated data sources to integrate into larger systems for wider use. And this 2-sided driver of data availability is leading to that point where there is greater pressure on governance stakeholders to keep up with emerging data sources and products and know which sources meet their needs for planning and policy making, and also have the necessary channels and resources to integrate those data. Now, next slide. Now, WRI has contributed to this space for a long time with notable products like Global Forest Watch, Aqueduct, Climate Watch, amongst many others. And they stand out due to their ability to draw in and appeal to users in a variety of contexts. These platforms provide users in a number of fields meaningful tools to integrate this emerging and vastly or rapidly growing sources of data into their work. In a targeted way, they deliver a specific product or service to meet a highlighted need that users have told us about. An ocean-focused system that can deliver the same meaning as these prior platforms to the decision makers that are facing a data revolution can be a useful aid to allow for the greater integration of data into planning and policy. It can also provide a significant source of learning to support stakeholders as the wave of possibilities and expectations for data-driven processes in ocean management propagate around the world in parallel with the growth of the available data. Next slide. And this is where Ocean Watch fits in. Ocean Watch is a platform that we are developing to meet the needs of ocean governance stakeholders in the integrated management of the ocean, and as a tool to better understand the data available for processes like marine spatial planning, with the broad goal of promoting a more integrated approach to ocean management at a large scale. The platform we're working on is not necessarily a broad solution to the science policy gap, but we are aiming to engage with ocean management professionals that could benefit most from curated data, tailored analyses, visualization services that aim specifically to support integrated forms of marine management and spatial planning. Their needs are very much at the center of the interest that we have in this, to understand the key challenges they face to ensure that the product we create meets the primary needs they have when it comes to the integration of data into marine management in this multi-sectoral space, particularly in the fast approaching expectation of data-driven management for a rapidly growing and, with our collective work, hopefully sustainable ocean economy. Next slide. And that's it from me. Thanks for listening. I'll speak more about the Ocean Watch that we're developing in some of the questions. And yeah, I'll end there.
John, thank you so much. Dawn, I think we'd like you to speak next.
So my name is Dawn Wright, again, a chief scientist of Esri, or the Environmental Systems Research Institute. And I've been asked to give a private sector perspective on ocean sharing. Esri is a privately owned information technology, geographic information system, and spatial data science company. And we have been very excited to be involved with these other partners in several efforts to protect the ocean. So given the nature of our company, I wanted to make a case for geospatial. And one of the wonderful things that's occurring now is that there is a geospatial framework that's emerging around the world, including for the oceans. And it involves and supports so many organizations and communities, including my colleagues on this panel. All of us are seeking to share our data sets and services. And this is all dramatically extending the impact of geographic information systems and similar geospatial technologies, all of which provide a spatial framework toward helping ocean data achieve its full potential. Spatial, in fact, is indeed special because it lies at the heart of just about everything that matters to us in the ocean realm. For instance, where to best establish and enforce additional marine protected areas, especially in the high seas, where and how to sustainably feed a rapidly growing population with ocean-based protein, where to address hotspots of rapidly declining ocean oxygen or increasing ocean acidification, where to mitigate and adapt to a changing climate. All of these are inherently spatial issues. And what we're seeking oftentimes is a proven framework, particularly with the sharing of data, because as we go through this virtuous cycle here of measuring and visualizing and mapping, analyzing and modeling, doing the planning and evaluation that's necessary to make decisions, and most importantly of all, taking action, we want to be able to integrate our platforms, bring together and apply all of our collective geographic ocean knowledge. So again, it's really a pleasure to be involved in the discussion on this panel. Now, Esri is working with a loosely connected network of organizations to leverage and extend this global framework. And many of these organizations on this slide you will hopefully recognize. Now, Esri has millions upon millions of our own users, and we have tens of thousands of business partners, but we work also to leverage that community with specific organizations and initiatives that we've been working with of late, including GEO's Blue Planet, the Ocean Data Platform of C4IR Ocean, which you'll hear from Linwood, the National Geographic, the partnership of global organizations for ocean observation, various NGOs and universities, of course NOAA, particularly within their big data initiative, Microsoft, especially toward building their new planetary computer, the E.O. Wilson Foundation, the UN's Sustainable Development Solutions Network for advancing the SDGs, the NSF Ocean OBS Research Coordination Network, and others, all with an eye toward ocean conservation, science, education, and of course, sustainability. And our vision for this community is to create and share new approaches and digital experiences, and to interoperate among our platforms, not unlike a series of Lego blocks that are being pushed together to create something that's bigger and better, all towards, of course, global sustainability and biodiversity conservation. In terms of actions in education and geodesign, planning and designing ocean spaces, forecasting with climate change, public status reporting, earth science modeling within our ocean science community, all of this again to create a more pervasive understanding and to enable action towards a more sustainable ocean future. Now, one of the things that we have built at Esri is this Indicators of the Planet, which is it's like a report card for the Earth. And in building this, we partnered with Microsoft and National Geographic and the United Nations Sustainable Development Solutions Network to compile 18 pressing topics that are affecting our planet. And we have these report cards that are reporting in near real-time or real-time with data feeds to match. There likely will be more than 18, but right now the result is a single point to understand these 18 from a day-to-day and year-to-year change that is occurring on this planet. So as you can see, these are all marked according to the relevant Sustainable Development Goal, and there's several that are specific to the ocean. And again, there will be more that will be added. This is also going to be a backbone of Microsoft's planetary computer. Another major partnership or collaboration that we've undertaken is with the National Geographic. And this has a lot to do with telling compelling stories and engaging stories about our planet, about the ocean, especially from the standpoint of education and activism. But most recently, just this week, we entered into a much closer partnership with National Geographic's Pristine Seas program, which, as many of us know, has been at the forefront of exploring and helping to protect nearly 6 million square kilometers of ocean. So we have just launched into a collaboration with them in terms of their science, but also in terms of helping them to disseminate and to tell stories based on the data that they're collecting on all these expeditions. We also have the Ecological Marine Units project, where Esri came together in a public-private partnership with all of these organizations at the bottom to create a global 3D base map of the oceans. And this is also drawn from the World Ocean Atlas of NOAA, in turn based on UNESCO IOC IODEs and NOAA's World Ocean Database. And it's published now in these outlets. There are several apps. There are several use cases underway to connect even more biological and ecological data to the ecological marine units. And finally, there is a great partnership that has just been started for GEO's Blue Planet, where we have been supporting the SDG 14.1A initiative on coastal eutrophication. And there's a dashboard that has been built for that to support that goal and also a data hub. This is letting you know what's going on the citizen science front with Earth Challenge 2020, which is a collaboration between Esri, the Earth Day Network, the Wilson Center, and the U.S. Department of State. And there's so many more collaborations that are underway, but I hope this gives you an idea of what's going on from our standpoint. And this is how you can contact me for further information, and looking forward to the discussion on the panel. Thank you.
Great. Dawn, thank you so much. That was just fantastic, and a lot for us to talk about in the discussion period. Anna, would you like to present next?
Yes, thank you. So again, I'm with Amazon with the sustainability team, and I'm going to take a few minutes to talk to you about the Amazon Sustainability Data Initiative. Next slide. So for a little bit of context, just to explain why we are at the table and doing what we're doing. So Amazon as a corporation is committed to playing a key role in addressing climate change. And as part of that commitment, last year we co-funded the Climate Pledge. And what that calls is for the signatories to be net zero carbon by 2040. And it will require on our side, of course, that we look across all our operations and make a lot of changes, including going 100% renewable, being powered by renewable energy by 2025, and other similar commitments. But what we see with this exercise is that there will be a lot of innovation required to meet these goals, not only by Amazon, by the signatories, but in general by the larger community and the world. So we see ourselves being able to play two roles. One is to focus on that innovation internally, but the second role is to play a role of enablement. How do we enable others to come to the table and innovate by leveraging our scale, our technology, and our infrastructure? Next slide. And so part of the focus, at least for this program that I'm introducing today, is trying to ensure that everybody can have access to meaningful and timely and data-driven insights, which is really at the core of this entire process. And this was discussed already here before and brought up by others, but the amount of data that is available out there is overwhelming for most users. The data is spread everywhere. It's really hard to, in most cases, discover, access, and use. And so this is an opportunity for Amazon, especially with the cloud. Next slide, please. To basically identify what are some of those challenges and remove barriers to that process of innovation. So in a nutshell, what the Amazon Sustainability Data Initiative is trying to do is to identify those barriers and remove the cost, the time, and the technical issues that are preventing people from accessing big data sets, analyzing them, and generating insights. Next slide. So let me tell you in practice what that means. And I think this is relevant for this community because we do have a focus also on the ocean from a sustainability point of view, but more broadly, what we bring into the table is the focus on three core areas. One of the focal areas is on democratizing access to data. And what that means is that we work across the community. And when I say community, I'm really saying all the sectors. We work with private sectors, startups, and big corporations, and NGOs, and government labs, and you name it, and try to understand what are those key foundational data sets that if we bring to the cloud and make publicly accessible and usable by everybody, we can potentially unlock some innovation. So that's the data aspect. And we've been building a catalog, and I'll tell you in a future slide a little bit more about what we have currently and how we're going about it. Then the second component is to recognize that the data is valuable if it's open and accessible, but without the tool and the computing next to it, you really, there's very little value to it. So one of the focus here in this program is how do we bring analytical and computational capabilities to a larger number of users out there beyond the traditional, research organizations and groups that have access to the large storage and computing centers. So we do that through different mechanisms. The main one being we have an open call for proposals, and anybody can basically apply to get grants to work in the cloud as long as it's connected with some sustainability related work. And the third component, very focused on promoting knowledge exchange, is not less important than the other two. We recognize that not everybody has been exposed to some of the tools and capable analytical capabilities that are required to work with large volumes of data. So we're trying to work as much as possible what we call the trailblazers, which are those users in the forefront of this conversation, to ask them, can you share your story? Can you share your best practices that are emerging and the lessons learned? And can we do that through tutorials and blog posts and sharing code and things like that? So there's a whole effort to build this community of practice and encourage people to grow this ecosystem together. Next slide. So very quickly, just to give you an example, some of the data providers, we work with groups around the world, traditionally authoritative sources of data that add anything from weather observations to, I have a list there, like climate projections, elevation, anything, and of course, ocean data. And I identified a few of the data sets we have currently in the system. And as I mentioned, we continue to expand this catalog in response to the needs of the users. So this will continue to increase. Very briefly, just some links for those that are interested, not only in accessing our catalog, but also have access to applying for the proposals and see some of the stories that we've been publishing with the community. And okay, I just wanted to step here and stop a second and think, yes, we're going through this effort. There's a lot of effort involved in identifying data sets, bringing them to the cloud, hosting them, but really, what is the kind of impact that we're seeing? And I think that's the key question here. Is it really making a difference? And we believe that it is. We haven't been around for too many years, but we are seeing already a lot of impact that we see not only in the scientific community, and this slide just gives you one example of one of the stories that we created with a scientist that is telling us basically the value of moving some of the SST, or the sea surface temperature data, to the cloud, and how they enable not only much faster experimentation, right? Because now with the scalable infrastructure, she can use several processors at the same time, but the ability to actually collaborate more easily with other people, because not only our data is in the cloud, but the code is in the cloud and other people can build on top of it. She believes one of the big benefits is really this becomes a more inclusive scientific community, because not only the people, as I mentioned before, that have access traditionally to those resources are at the table, but we have many more voices with different perspectives. So this is sounding a little bit like a cloud promotion session, but it's not my intent. I guess what I'm trying to say here is that we have these resources that we are bringing to the table because we really want to encourage innovation, and we want to understand how to bring that to the ocean community if we can. So next slide, just very briefly, just to mention that the innovation we're seeing is not happening just on the research side, on academia, is also happening in the private sector. When we put this data in the cloud and suddenly people don't have to go through the cost of acquisition and maintaining the data sets and have compute right next to it, we're seeing a lot of startups suddenly picking up on those data sets and building new services and new products that are supporting this economy. And the space goes obviously beyond oceans. I put additional, next slide, as an example of how a company in Slovenia is using Earth observation that we are making available in the cloud to monitor water bodies at risk around the world. That's just an example, and many different ones. For instance, the next slide shows an example of how 427, which is a company that does climate risk, is using some of the climate data observation to do similar work. And the last example is a startup in India that is using some of the data and the grants that we're providing to look at air quality and model air quality in India. So I'll stop here, but again, like the idea here is just to show what some of the things that are possible and some of the resources that are available, and we're really eager to understand what the main challenges are for the ocean community and understand if we have a role to play and how to do that. Thank you.
Anna, thank you for a great three terrific presentations. Let's all come back to the group just for a couple of minutes because I want to get to the next set of presentations quickly as well. But just to touch on a couple of themes, I'd like to ask each of you just a general question, which is you're all talking in different ways about bringing different kinds of data sources together and making them more available through the platforms that you're constructing. Really curious if you could each talk just very briefly about what are some of the challenges that you're seeing regarding bringing together different kinds of ocean data globally, whether it's interoperability, data standards and definitions, data governance issues, or other kinds of issues. And I know Linwood will hear from you in a few minutes, but I know you had some thoughts on, maybe we'll start with some of the technical issues from the three presenters so far, and then would love your thoughts on some of the non-technical issues as well. But Dawn, would you like to kind of begin? What are some of the challenges that you're seeing as you bring different kinds of data together, and how do we overcome those?
Yes, well, there are long-standing problems with data formats, interoperating between those formats, the use of data standards, and data governance. Those are all huge problems. And what is encouraging me is that there are a series of meetings now. And I loved what Anna said about communities of practice, because, for instance, there's an ocean best practices global community now that is tackling many of those questions. But from the standpoint of what we deal with our data, and we at Esri are also, we use Amazon Web Services and have been pleased to work closely with Amazon. And I think both Anna and I would agree that one of the problems is that people are taking chunks of data and duplicating them, downloading them, moving them around from desktop to desktop, when we are trying to get greater efficiency in terms of helping users to understand that they should keep their data in the cloud, keep the data there once, and then take the analytics, move your analytics to that one point in the cloud. And that will greatly help our efficiency. It's also going to be, I think, very much easier for people to find data because it's in that one place. That's where it is, that's where it lives. But you are bringing analytics and visualization functions, API, all these things are being brought to that. So that's one observation.
Anna, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, thank you.
Or other points you'd like to make?
Yeah, no, but just to build on what Dawn said, I agree, and that's part of the exercise we're trying to go through with this program too, is a little bit help people change the paradigm. The traditional paradigm, as Dawn was saying, is we find the data, we bring into our local computers and work on premise, and there's a lot of lack of efficiency there. But there's a big issue also with the problems that we're trying to address nowadays, like climate change, and where we require to go across domains and to break through the silos that we've been operating inside of for all this time. And it becomes extremely difficult, and not only from the interoperability point of view, but also how do you bring all this data together into one central location? And that's where we see the cloud as an opportunity to overcome one of those challenges because of the volume of data that we are talking about here. So yeah, that's definitely a big issue.
Great. John, what about your experience with Ocean Watch? How do these issues play into what you're doing at WRI?
No, it sounds very similar as well. And I mean, if we think about what Anna was saying with the climate meeting some of the ocean stuff and the horizontality of that sort of issue, there's also a verticality to it of how do we bring those local data sets into sort of the global setting and use them in that way and kind of make them most efficient at a higher level. And it introduces kind of new layers to that issue too. And that's something that we're trying to deal with too, or find ways around.
Yeah, great. And Linwood, we'll hear from you in a couple of minutes, but I know you had some thoughts on not only the technical, but sort of the socio-cultural aspects of trying to bring different data together from different sources.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, because while we have this incredible growing body of institutional data, there's still a tremendous amount of data that simply isn't shared. It never makes its way into these institutional databases. There are 150 countries that are member countries of the Intergovernmental Oceanographic Commission, part of UNESCO. And a great deal of them simply don't share their data. And it's for reasons of national security, trust. There is an increasing trend among many countries to create data localization policies for all data for fear that they're going to lose control of data. So a lot of the work I do tries to figure out where these bottlenecks are occurring and how we can begin to break down those barriers using more sort of human-to-human interactions, and doing so really release the power of the technology that Dawn and Anna and John described.
Fantastic, thank you. And that's actually a terrific segue into our next 4 presentations. The ones we just heard, I think we're a lot about sort of data sharing platforms and those kinds of efforts. And we're going to move now into some presentations that talk about some other aspects so touching more, I think, on aspects of data governance and how that relates also to governance of marine resources, and also more on climate, which I want to come back to in the discussion after the next few presentations. But let's move ahead now and hear from our other panelists, beginning with Amy Trice, if you'd like to start us off.
Sure. So as I mentioned earlier, I'm with Ocean Conservancy, and I'm going to offer an NGO perspective on ocean data and management, bringing in our experience working with industry, conservation, and ocean and coastal management agency partners. So with my time today, I want to talk about the concept of integrated ocean management, the opportunities this integrated approach presents for collaboration and partnerships on ocean data, outline some examples of where ocean data is being synthesized and presented publicly with ocean users in mind that lead to improved management decisions, and offer some insights on how we can move forward to advance what is needed. Next slide. So integrated ocean management is an approach that seeks to more holistically manage the ocean. It's an attempt to really get out of this siloed management and consider considerations that there are interactions among management structures. And as we heard a little bit earlier, now more than ever with climate change and increasing technologies in the offshore space, we need this type of holistic management approach. And we're seeing a renewed commitment of this adaptive management approach with recent work at the high-level panel for sustainable ocean economy. Countries are really recognizing the need and committing to development of these EEZ-wide integrated ocean plans as a way to really begin to organize ocean management priorities for the environment and for the sustainable future ocean economies. Next slide. So integrated ocean management plans offer an opportunity for a nation to really define their societal goals that are specific to that location and work to advance those holistically. And as part of that effort, information on the ocean is really critical. Integrated ocean management prioritizes the importance of this local context and decision-making. So there's really a value of transparency and a necessity of robust community engagement, which are all key themes that are improved by collaboration and access to data and information. So, my experience is mainly in the US, so I'll talk a little bit about what that looks like here. So in the US, we have the foundation for integrated ocean management in place at the federal level. This was accomplished through a national ocean policy executive order that directed all the relevant ocean and coastal agencies to coordinate and to develop ocean plans in regions that wanted to take up this approach. And it was really kickstarted here in the US by a recognition that there were around 22 federal agencies with a stake in ocean management that were really not coordinated on management. They weren't coordinated on management, on data collection, on research, and a recognition that all these challenges are happening and that approach is just not sustainable for the future of the challenges that we need to really address. And so there's been a lot of work to change the cultural changes that have to occur within various different, institutions and management structures, getting out of that sort of standard agency business as usual and move forward towards this more collective management effort. Next slide. So as a result of this policy, the Northeast and Mid-Atlantic regions have developed comprehensive plans thus far, with other regions compiling data and information to inform management really through a lens of what their specific priorities are. So restoration being an example. And because local context is crucial, some regions have developed full integrated ocean plans, while others have decided to approach defining management objectives that make sense for what that region needs. So with any of these planning processes, data and information are really critical to making informed decisions. Robust engagement with the community is really also a huge key to success. As we really, the thinking is to work to define what these societal goals are and how a particular area of the ocean should be managed. So for example, if we're thinking about the Northeast United States, they may value recreational boating and commercial fishing in ways that an area on the West Coast may not. Maybe a specific industry or new technology wants to come into an area. How do we manage those human activities, knowing that ocean ecosystems are shifting and changing? How do we account for the needs of marine mammals with increased ship traffic and the potential interference of shipping and how that might overlap with key fisheries habitat? Integrated ocean management really allows you to take all those uses and those system level needs into consideration and work to adaptively manage. So the overlay of all those things that I've laid out is information. So how do we work to improve information, not only to better identify what is collected, but how that is translated to those who really need to use that data to make decisions. So an example of this integrated approach and really how it plays out from like a transparent information perspective is through the regional ocean data portals. There's like those in the Northeast US. And so here's an example of several spatial data layers related to offshore wind and maritime commerce. Next slide. And then another example of the data portal, there's about 5,000 data layers on ocean uses and ecosystem components, including everything from marine mammals, fisheries habitat, as well as trends and changes over various timescales. So this is just another example of what that looks like spatially, taking some of this data and putting it to help make more informed decisions. Next slide. So my hope is really as we move forward in partnership and through collaborations, consideration is given to who benefits from the data and information. So as new data, new ideas and observational tools, technologies are developed, we really need to consider the underlying reality about whom our research currently benefits and who should benefit to achieve economic and social equity. So how can we use existing data in new ways for the benefit, not just of some, but for the whole of communities? Inclusivity really requires full engagement on topics like ocean exploration, characterization, and mapping, as well as a lot of these new technologies that are coming out by who uses and needs that ocean data. It also means we really need to think more thoughtfully about traditional knowledge being included and how that provides insights and observations, and that underserved communities are engaged to really fully acknowledge what that social ecological system looks like, and we can better collectively plan for the future benefit of, for all of us. So with climate change, a pandemic recovery, all these management challenges we are collectively up against, I think the key here is really starting to think about developing partnerships as we work to plan ocean uses more holistically. And that really provides an opportunity to bring knowledge streams together in unique ways. Next slide. So with a little bit of time left, I'll just end with a mention that later this year, and as Joel and Matt highlighted a bit earlier, we're releasing a report with Code that outlines some recommendations that the federal government can take. It's focused on the US, can take to really advance ocean data. And there's really specific recommendations from both, mainly from a from a policy perspective, recommendations around funding, which is obviously something we all struggle with, forming partnerships and improving existing collaborative structures at both the federal and regional level. How do we create incentives and policy frameworks for better data sharing? How do we address privacy and confidentiality? Better defining what some folks highlighted earlier, that fit for purpose based products, like the stakeholder technical capacity challenges. What are some solutions around that? And how do we sort of collectively work to better address the region specific data gaps that regions have highlighted as a challenge? Next slide. So I will end there and just, this is my contact information. Feel free to reach out anytime with questions.
Amy, fantastic. Thank you so much. And I want to just echo what Matt said at Code. We've just been really, really thrilled to be able to work with Ocean Conservancy on the roundtable, on the upcoming paper, and hope we can be helpful in all the work you're trying to do and doing so well. Linwood, if you'd like to share your perspective next.
I would be very happy to share my perspective. I'd like to talk about a new nonprofit that is now operating in this ocean data space. It's called the Center for the Fourth Industrial Revolution, Oceans. It's based in Oslo, Norway, but has staff in Trondheim and Bergen, and here in France, where I live. It's part of the World Economic Forum network. And you probably know the World Economic Forum through its convening of global CEOs and heads of state at Davos. Over the past couple of years, the World Economic Forum has really pivoted to bringing the power of industry and using its convening power to focus on environmental issues. And when it comes to the ocean, it's quite well known now for supporting something called Friends of Ocean Action. Next slide. In addition, though, the World Economic Forum has been very active recently in the past 2 or 3 years as well on what it calls the Fourth Industrial Revolution, and has created a network of C4IRs. These are Centers for the Fourth Industrial Revolution. Next slide. This network seeks to understand what are the barriers that prevent the application of Fourth Industrial Revolution technologies to the public good. And when we talk about Fourth Industrial Revolution technologies, we're talking about things like the Internet of Things and the increasingly connected devices that are part of our daily lives, artificial intelligence, drones, and autonomous vehicles. We're talking about technologies like blockchain, and we're talking about the emergence of new kinds of data policies that I talked about earlier when I was thinking about what are some of the challenges. These data policies can both help data flow better, but increasingly can block the flow of data. This network is intended to bring people together to try to solve some of the problems that prevent the good use of these kinds of data. Next slide. And it really is a global network. It is made up of a handful of centers that are run directly by the World Economic Forum, and those are here in blue, including the headquarters, which is based in San Francisco, but also there are offices in India, China, and Japan. And the World Economic Forum, in order to scale up, created a system of affiliated networks that allow countries to sponsor their own C4IRs. And so we have places like the United Arab Emirates and Saudi Arabia, South Africa, Brazil, Colombia, and we've added new countries even since this map was put together just a few weeks ago, like Ghana and Israel. These affiliates tend to reflect the work that's being done by the World Economic Forum centers, but really focusing on the application of C4IR technologies to the issues that are most important to their specific country. Norway established its own Center for the Fourth Industrial Revolution in the summer of 2019, and it was in 2020 where it officially became the Center for the Fourth Industrial Revolution, Ocean. Next slide, please. By being a center focused on the ocean, it differs from all of the other centers for the fourth industrial revolution in that it is not focused just on one country. It is a global in its focus, but it is thematically focused on oceans. And it represents a departure from other countries that tend to have their centers for the fourth industrial revolution sponsored by the national government that hosts the center. In Norway, the Center for the Fourth Industrial Revolution is a collaboration between the government of Norway, the Aker Group, which is a collection of maritime industries, and Rev Ocean, which is an environmental organization focused on scientific exploration of the sea, including building the world's most sophisticated ocean research vessel, which is also a super yacht, and then the Ocean Data Platform. So it's all of these things were brought together, working with the World Economic Forum to really try to understand how we can better use data, particularly big data, in these 4IR technologies to solve many of the ocean problems that we've been talking about for the last 60 minutes or so. The way we work at the Center for the Fourth Industrial Revolution is as follows. Next slide. It's really a four-step process that begins with bringing partners together who have identified the need for ocean data, but have recognized that that need can't be fulfilled because there are governance or cultural or social or political obstacles to sharing those data. So the partners will come together, they'll scan to determine what the problems and obstacles are, write a white paper about that, and then work very hard in small groups on specific case studies to brainstorm solutions for those, to overcome those obstacles. Once they have that, what we try to do is pilot these solutions, usually in a very short time span, as a sprint. And we work with the Ocean Data Platform that I'll talk about in a minute to pilot solutions to data problems. And then once we've piloted them, we try to scale up. Now, this is the way we work. We've just started, and so we have begun to explore different kinds of use cases that we can put through this process to see if we can really begin to break down some of these barriers. Next slide. We are able to pilot data-oriented solutions through our collaboration with the Ocean Data Platform. The Ocean Data Platform is based there also in Norway. It's part of the Center for the Fourth Industrial Revolution Oceans, and it is a true platform in the sense, say, that Airbnb or Uber is a platform. We don't try to host data. We're not a Dropbox for data. But we are creating an infrastructure that really focuses on the automated ingestion of data from different sources and then makes it available to app builders, tool makers, and scientists. And so our focus with this Ocean Data Platform is to try to find new ways of bringing data together that haven't been brought together typically. And then as we do that, continue to build the platform. We do this initially by working with oceanographic data. We are piloting a variety of different kinds of data to build the structure for that Ocean Data Platform, including working with the partners you see here, many of whom are part of the panel. And the idea is to try to begin by working with as many different kinds of data as possible, including geospatial data like Dawn described, and we work very closely with Dawn. But we're also very interested in bringing in non-geospatial data, including video data, imagery data, acoustic data, and the like. Creating this pipeline through the platform. And then really our focus is not on the ultimate end user, but the intermediate end user, making sure that the data that we're pushing through our platform can be readily used by coders, can be used in GIS, and this is where, once again, we work very closely with Esri, working with World Resources Institute so they can make this available in their platforms. and the others. And the idea here is to scale by working with these partners, but not to limit ourselves to these partners, to constantly be adding new partners to the mix. We do this, we have the Ocean Data Platform has this data value chain, so next slide, please, that begins with fast data ingestion, and really that is where we're focusing now. We're trying to make it so we can get more data into the cloud, into AWS, into Living Atlas, et cetera, and trying to make it easier for data providers to get their data into the Ocean Data Platform so we can share it widely. That is the basic way of working. We really take advantage of our collaboration with the World Economic Forum, which has tremendous convening power to bring our partners together in a safe space to try to work through some of these difficult problems. You know, I mentioned earlier, trust is a big issue, and one size doesn't fit all. So by working through this C4IR process, we hope to work bilaterally, multilaterally, and in small groups to overcome some of the most difficult human challenges to sharing ocean data. I'll stop there.
Terrific, Linwood, thank you so much. Nati, you're up next if you'd like to tell us about the Open Data Charter.
Yeah, well, thank you once again for the invitation, Joel, and everybody at Code. And I'm gonna follow up with most of the speakers that were before me because it's amazing the work that they've been doing. I just want to share in this few minutes the work that we've been done with a really practical tool that we developed actually with the help of Code and the World Resources Institute that it's called the Open Up Guide on Climate Action. And some of the key findings that we had, and oceanographic data it's included there, so just sharing that. So next slide, just on a brief idea of what open data means for everybody out there. Open data is a key public good that presents opportunities to provide innovative evidence-based policy solutions and some economic benefits and social development for all members of society. And with that in mind, we, the Open Data Charter, are a collaboration between governments and experts and civil society organizations and academics working on open data globally. We were founded now 5 years ago and have over 75 governments adopting the charter and over 70 organizations endorsing the charter worldwide. So we collaborate with governments, but always working with the community organizations in each of the countries and that we work with. Next slide. So for our work, we've developed a data impact framework where we understand that the idea of publish and they will come has not worked. So we need to better work on the questions that we're trying to answer before working on opening up data. So publishing with a purpose, it's our goal. So we work with governments and civil society organizations to try to understand the public problems that they want to tackle using open data, and then work with the governments to try to open up the data that could bring solutions to these problems. So understanding which are the questions before moving forward with opening up data, because we know it's not easy, it has a lot of challenges, and so prioritization it's key to the work. Next slide. So what we've done so far well, we've done a lot of projects. One of them is working on these open up guides, which are practical tools for governments to guide their open data policies if they want to work on tackling thematic priorities. So we have an open up guide on agriculture, one on anti-corruption, and the other one, the one on climate action, which is the one that I'm gonna be working a little bit more with. Next slide. So what we did is we partner with Code, with World Resources Institute, and we developed a first version on what an open up guide on climate action could look like. And here you'll see the key data types. The tool actually has around 72 data sets that any government should be opening up if they want to be working on climate action, addressing it via open data. We created this tool through a series of consultations with experts. We held workshops in the International Open Data Conference. We brought it back to the COP conference. So we kind of navigated both the climate change and the open data worlds and communities to try to understand the priorities of each of them, and also trying to create the bridge between them because there wasn't much conversation going on there. And so with this first version, what we did is try to implement it and pilot what it would look like, this implementation. And we worked with 2 governments in Latin America, with the Uruguayan one and with the Chilean one. Both of them already had open data policies in place, teams within government that have been working in open data for a long time, with different strengths and different capacities, but they were really well known on that behalf. And then both had really important climate change offices and even ministries working in collaboration with other ministries, also with like a horizontal collaboration between different governments to try to different ministries, sorry, to try to tackle climate change. So some of the key findings that I would like to share about that is on these implementations, what we did at first is try to do a mapping. The first version of the mapping is done with the vision of any citizen. So trying to find these 72 data sets, just Googling it or trying to find it in a very basic way. And most of the data sets were not out there or were not findable. So we understand that the data should be of quality and technical, but it's really difficult for those that are not within the climate change community to be able to understand what they are looking for. So that is one of the things that we understood on that mapping. And then on the second phase of the mapping, where we worked with governments to try to understand what was already digitized and already created, there was a lot of data that was already in digital, but was not being shared in any way, aside from the reporting obligations that each government had because of different international agreements. So it was the purpose of that data being created, aside from maybe internal monitoring, was the reporting. And so it wasn't being opened because sometimes they hadn't even thought of that. So some of the key findings, which I think also resonate with what has been said already, the mapping side, the data on climate change and specifically on oceanographic data is recollected by multiple government offices. So mapping who the key actors are is key to understand how to better collect and publish this data to be able to open it up. Every climate change policy and oceanographic data also has to be worked horizontally and with a lot of internal collaboration and cooperation between ministries, even if there is a core office that leads this work. Then the other key finding has to do with the collaboration. I tackle on that. Another key finding and that was kind of surprising for us has to do with this thing that I have already said. Many agencies don't know or understand the value of the data they produce for other reusers. So they didn't even think about opening up this data. They were very keen, and there's a lot of work and a lot of resources, human resources and budgetary resources that are put in place in order to be able to develop this data, to create this data, to analyze this data, and to do the reporting. But they haven't even thought about opening it up and thinking about other uses, other values other than reporting. And there's a lot of lost public value there if they don't share that data. And then another thing that I've already said, but I will say it over and over again because it's key to any open data policy is prioritization and the engagement with possible reusers, not just the most technical ones, but as we saw, for example, the open data community wasn't very much engaged with the climate change one, with even the oceanographic one. So we need to be able to, through these implementations, help create that community, help create those bridges with the possible reusers in order to understand the demand, in order to understand the challenges and problems they are working on, and in order to give prioritization to governments also on which data sets to work first. And then one of the things that it seems to be kind of funny, but it's actually really important. After the mapping and after a couple of studies, what we did in both countries was an in-person, when that was possible, an in-person workshop where we invited government officials from all the agencies that had to do with the data of the Open Up Guide. And we worked on person interoperability. It's not just data that needs to interoperate, it's people also. There was a lot of examples where two agencies didn't know that the other was creating or collecting the same data that they were lacking, that they were eager for. So, and that happens in every government all around the world. It's not just in these two cases, but it's important to be able to create those internal collaboration systems, not only the technical ones, but the social ones, in order to be able to provide better data, not only for designing public policies, but also to provide better services for the citizens. And I think that's it for me. Thank you very much again for the invitation. I'll be eager to keep the collaboration going with everybody here.
Nadi, thank you so much. That was great, and we were so glad that we were able to work with you in WRI to. I guess our role was really to help get things going, and so glad that guide is now out and being put to such good use. Claire, if you would finish up for us, and then we'll have a little bit of time for some very quick discussion. But please tell us about your work at OECD.
Thank you very much, Joel. So we've been working on the ocean economy for almost 7 years now at the OECD. And we are seeing many changes in terms of the growing high-level political interest in the ocean economy, the number and wider diversity of ocean economic activities, and in the technological changes and new business models we are seeing in the ocean data and information ecosystem. Next slide. Despite the COVID-19 crisis and its impacts on many ocean sectors like coastal tourism and shipping, the main reasons for this acceleration of economic activities in the ocean remain. We need to transport goods, we have energy needs, people will need more food from the ocean, and eventually leisure and the travel industry will pick up. But the ocean economy is also changing. I'm showing here 2 examples with some recent press clippings. So first with shipping, that will have to transition to a low carbon economy. But the efforts to pollute less will also need to be tracked carefully by policymakers. And a second example, with industrial aquaculture. The development is reaching such a scale in some regions of the world that sustainability is getting even more attention, as you can see here in the press clippings. Not only industry actors have engaged in too much R&D to make this industry less pollutant, but the environmental impacts of old and new farms are often increasingly mapped and can be observed by third parties. Ocean observing play an ever increasing role in all of this. Next slide. And it just so happened that almost exactly a year ago, that was last September, the international observing community met to discuss the achievements, the challenges, and the new systems that would need to be developed in the decades to come. And some questions came up concerning the future of ocean data and their link to sustainable development. To the questions, are ocean observations and sustainable development goals well linked? The response was often not enough. To the questions, are we measuring well the value we're getting from these observations? Overall, no. And finally, is valuing making any difference actually? And it was almost surprisingly a resounding yes from a number of actors, particularly from national administrations that need to convince policymakers that the ocean data is important. Next slide, please. For us in the community, ocean data and products are obviously crucial for conservation, but also to improve the sustainable uses of the ocean, as many of my co-panelists also demonstrated. More often than not, ocean data are largely collected from publicly funded systems. And in many of the presentations that we heard today, indeed, at the core of many of the platforms are publicly funded data. And many policymakers still need to be made aware of these benefits. Because although this map here on this slide seems quite crowded with different systems, and in some cases, research institutions do have decades of data sets for some variables, major gaps still remain geographically. And as shown here also, much science and R&D is still needed to observe and collect a number of essential ocean variables, particularly biological data we need to assess ecosystems. So that's where exciting partnerships and new organizations that we heard about during this session come in. Next slide. We need collectively ocean data infrastructures that are resilient and sustained, from the initial long-term investments needed for public systems that collect much of the data, to the platforms that make data accessible to a broad diversity of user communities. So based on much analysis conducted over decades of open data policies, including by some of you and my colleague that just presented before me, we know that data products can have scientific and economic value, obviously, when these data are easily accessible. But administrations do need to make the case to policymakers. And at the OECD, that's something that's obviously very important to us. And that's the type of request we keep receiving from a number of governments. At the end of the day, they need to show value for money. At the OECD, we are working with a number of organizations, including the Intergovernmental Oceanographic Commission and the Global Ocean Observing Systems, and quite a few others, to map specific ocean data value chains. Linwood mentioned the importance of these value chains to build up more evidence. Where we're seeing great potential is in this digital revolution with many of the actors in this panel that will improve user uptake, such as the partnership between NOAA and cloud and analytics providers. Some other countries are now starting to explore also public-private partnerships to improve access to their institutional ocean data sets to a wide range of users. But as also Linwood mentioned, out of the 150 or more members of the Intergovernmental Oceanographic Commission, there's still much to do to convince some countries to share ocean data. And the same can be said for a number of ocean-based industries. The issue of governance, I think, will be key for the next decade. And as I mentioned at the beginning in this presentation, we are really seeing a new paradigm for the ocean economy. Improving access to ocean data and information to the benefit of scientists, researchers, and private stakeholders will really be crucial to improve transparency, especially on environmental impacts, and contribute to ocean sustainability. So I thank you for your attention and happy to have the discussion with you.
Great, Claire, thank you so much. We are pretty tight on time, but I have a couple of questions for some of the people who just presented. And now I'm going to give you fair warning. After I ask my few questions, I'm going to go around to everyone and ask you in 30 seconds to just say what you would most like the people viewing this presentation to do to help in next steps, whether there are particular kinds of collaborators that you're looking for, that you'd like to have contact you, whether there are action steps that you feel people interested in this area at the World Data Forum can take that would be helpful, whatever it is you'd like to say. So think about that for a bit, but I'm going to just start just with a couple of questions before we wrap up. Amy and Claire, I think in different ways, you both talked about the importance of crystallizing benefits of the use of ocean data, and the importance of really getting that kind of buy-in, getting that kind of awareness of why this is critical data to use and critical data to apply. And maybe Amy first and then Claire, could you highlight just a couple of what you think, just very quickly, what you think are some of the most important use cases that can help make the case for the use of this kind of data?
Sure. I think when you think about use cases, I highlighted a lot of those, I think, in my presentation, right, around the conflicts that we're seeing, particularly in the US. I would say offshore wind and, the need to address climate change is certainly a new area, a new industry that's coming into the US. And, we're trying to balance what does that look like and how does that use overlap with fisheries and habitat and endangered species. So certainly data and information there to make really informed decisions is really important. And, I think people also see that as an opportunity. You've got these platforms and structures out there, and what kind of partnerships and what kind of, science can we do with the industry as well, and what kind of data can we get back from that. So a lot of use cases around, I would say, industry, shifting fish stocks, particularly in New England, and them, the commercial fishery groups wanting to have better data and information. And, of course, I think climate change is our big challenge. And how do we start planning, not just reactionary, which I think is what we're doing often now, but start to plan for the future and what those scenarios look like.
Great, thank you. Claire, same question, your thoughts?
I would say two areas, because I'm thinking again of some of our customers, I would say, in terms of the governments. And there are two areas that I think need a lot of marketing, I would say, in a way. The first one would be probably marine spatial planning, and that really links to what you were saying, Amy. We had a workshop a couple of days ago with IOC and quite a number of actors, specifically on MSPs, and the need for data is just growing with the number of activities. MSP, really a very nice way to actually present the need for ocean data and products. And the second one that has to do with security at sea. And security at sea goes beyond piracy. It also has to do with some of the impacts that we're seeing with climate change and some of the large storms going on and the traffic. And there too, I have to admit, for policymakers, that's something that's so important. So these two topics, I think, would be a good way to sort of address some of the issues that we talked about.
Terrific, thank you. And Nadia, I have a somewhat related question for you. I was very struck that you talked about the importance of engagement to prioritize the kinds of data that you work with climate, including data that relates to the oceans. Any thoughts that you have about what makes that kind of engagement process effective? And given what we've been hearing about the need to really communicate the value of data, any thoughts that you have more broadly, even beyond the work ODC has done, around how we can better engage with the potential users of data and people who would benefit from data, from ocean data?
So thanks for the question, Joel. So from the example of these two implementations, these pilots, one of the key questions was the government officials were asking, were very eager to be able to ask outside of government how the work would be more impactful. Because as I said, it was a load of work. These reports that they are creating are incredible. But then they kind of understood that there was value there, but they didn't know what to do with that. So it was very interesting. In Uruguay, we held an event for the International Open Data Day, which with the climate change agency. So it was the first time that they saw a hackathon going on out live. And they were amazed, and they were very happy to be collaborating with all the teams that were there. So I think it has to do with understanding that opening up data from the government perspective has also to do with a cultural change. and understanding that these events where they see the value being created, the added value being created out live, actually helped us. Now we're thinking of the second round of this project with them, because now they want to engage, like they want to do more public participation events.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, that's a great sign of success for sure. No, that's great. So excellent. So let's go around now quickly. I wish we had, another few hours. I think we could, there's so much we could talk about, but let's just do a quick wrap up, and we'll go in the same order in which people presented, I think. So John, starting with you, just about 30 seconds, any key messages you want to leave for the audience here, particularly focused on anything you would want to invite people to do, either with your organization or in general to help advance this field.
Sure, I think I'll take this opportunity to be very self-serving, if no one objects.
We hope you will. Yes, that's fine.
But no, I mean, for us, when we refer to a open data platform that supports integrated marine management, in order to produce something that will provide value to a user, it needs to be developed with those users. And we're talking about a lot of users. We're not talking about a tool specifically for one area or specifically for one sector. We're talking about people who work on the management of multi-sectoral spaces in the ocean around the world. And so if that sounds like you, or if that sounds like someone you know, I need to talk to you. We need to get you into this process. And so my email is at the bottom of the presentation I gave. I cannot receive enough emails from these people. And so just reach out.
Great to hear. Thank you. Dawn, same question to you.
I couldn't agree more with John about the importance of users being involved. And I really liked what Amy said about indigenous communities as well, small island developing states, communities of color across the world. And what I liked about this panel, what I loved about this panel, is that each and every presentation had something for everyone, I think, including these users. So my hope is that everyone watching will take the time to review each of the presentations and to note all of our contacts. And certainly from my standpoint, please contact me, because at Esri, we are very user focused, and we are particularly passionate right now about users telling their stories using maps and data, videos, experiences, journals. And so we would welcome all of these different types of collaborations, from the most advanced to the basic. But if you are looking to tell stories and using technology for that, free and open technology for that, that would be especially exciting. And my dog is excited about it as well.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Anna.
Great. Well, I thank you again for the opportunity. I think I'll take the chance to just speak a little bit about our strategy for scaling. So one of the things we're trying to do is to collaborate with strategic partners or groups out there that we call like boundary organizations, right? Some trusted members of the community that can help us access a larger number of people, and not only to help disseminate the resources that we bring to the table, the data and the compute and all of that, but also to collect those needs. And that's something that is really important for us, is how do we collectively have work with groups that can give us that information, so we adjust the strategy of the program to better serve the needs of the users and customers in general. So yeah, thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. Amy.
Yeah, just sort of similar to what everyone else has offered. I think, if you're collecting data, think about those unique partnerships, what the data, what the end user needs. If you have access and the ability, encourage your government to, value and prioritize ocean data and research. I think we all recognize that funding is always a challenge, and, any and all of that, is helpful. And then similar to sort of what Don and others were saying, reach out to chat more. I'm always looking to learn from people and learn from this community. Our contact information is there. And again, like John said, no email is too many. So, happy to chat more.
Fantastic. Thank you. Linwood.
I think the one thing I would want everyone to always remind themselves of is that you always have to marry the human and the data together. And we've talked about users, but it's really connecting users with users, connecting data providers with users, connecting data providers with data providers, and recognize that as soon as you disconnect people from the data, whether it's the people who provide or use the data, you lose so much. And I think we really need to look outside of the ocean sector and learn from other kinds of platforms like the Amazon Marketplace, Uber, Airbnb, and learn how they've been able to connect people. I love this idea of Natalia's of human interoperability going hand in hand with data interoperability.
Lovely, thank you. And Nati, your thoughts?
Well, I will definitely connect with the other speakers, but I would also invite anybody in the UN Data Forum, if they're interested in working on open data around oceanographic data or any climate change data. We are eager to hear from you, because the Open Up Guide is not written in stone. So we're learning as we implement which are the core data sets, and we want to learn from other organizations or governments that are working on this area.
Fantastic, thank you. And Claire, your final thoughts.
Thank you very much. Here, in a way, I hope that many of the people who joined us for this panel were not too aware of some of the intricacies of ocean data, in a way. And I hope that you got something very new to you. But whether you're an expert or not on ocean data, I think it would be very good to have a conversation about these value chains that we started to talk about. So that's it for now.
Fantastic. Well, listen, thank you all so much. We're putting up a final slide now that has just a summary of resources and contact information. And just speaking for Code, we are very interested in continuing whatever we can do to help facilitate these kinds of conversations and the use of open data, of ocean data, as one of our primary commitments in the area of open and shared data and maximizing its value. So Matt Rumsey's email address is up there. He's our main point of contact for that work, and we invite you to contact us as well. So I want to thank all of you on this panel. This has just been a phenomenal exchange of information, wonderful discussion points. I think our viewers will probably take you all up on the invitation to contact you, and really look forward to more discussion and collaboration ahead. Thank you very much.